Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we're going to cover a whole bunch of very interesting stories. First of all, we're going to cover some milestones, some very big breaking news from baseball records to Twitter deals, and even to black people celebrating white culture, which is all good. So we're going to cover those. Then we're going to talk about some very dumb people saying a lot of dumb stuff. You're going to be you're going to be cringing and shaking your head at some of the things that are being said right now in politics. International news, we're going to talk about some crazy new bombs and a whole bunch of high stakes happening all over the world from some major powers. Then we're going to switch over and talk about how your governments all over the world are doing some really harmful things, from kicking girls' teams out of locker rooms all the way to hurting kids and during lockdowns. And then finally, we're going to talk about two complete clowns in Canada who continue to get away with all of their nonsense. All of that and more on the Shrewd Dudes podcast.
All right, it's another Tuesday, Newsday, and we are back after a weekend.
And, frivolity and fun.
Well, it was mostly frivolity for Danny because he defied his expectations and responsibilities.
Hey,
to do what he wanted.
I feel like I kept my responsibilities of being a good bro to my bros, because this was kind of a milestone for them. So I feel like I did my my part of being a good friend. Encourage everyone to do the same. By the way, Steven, I feel like I have to be the toxic male here and tell you to smile. I know it's hard. I know it's crucial, but you gotta have to do the Barbie and just force it. Until your cheeks hurt. Oh, he's doing the Terminator 2 smile.
I'm doing the Bell's palsy smile.
Yeah. You ever see that scene in Terminator 2? Like what the deleted scenes? Where he tries to show him how to smile. And he's like, his face is so distorted. You're like, don't do that. Yeah. A robot trying to learn how to smile. Speaking of robots, Steven, how was your weekend?
Busy. But not nearly as busy as this weekend coming up. Oh my gosh.
Really?
But yeah, Friday wasn't that much. It was like an early day from work.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday I drove to Brooks. So a good friend of mine and his family live out there. Mm-hmm. So I spent the day out there. And then Sunday we had church and then Life Chain.
Oh yeah, how did Life Chain go?
Life Chain was pretty decent.
Yeah, any crazy people show up to try to get angry at this thing?
Well, there was of course your typical people who were screaming profanities and all that sort of thing.
Lovely.
And my parents actually, my kids. So we were at Superstore prior to the event,
mm-hmm.
and because we were grabbing stuff for afterwards, because we were meeting up with my parents.
Yep.
And so I'm talking to the kids. I'm like, okay, so we're going to make signs.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to hold your signs. So because you guys are going to be holding signs, you guys get to choose what's on the signs. And so I had to give them kind of this rudimentary explanation of what abortion was. And so I'm like, okay, what do you want on your signs? And so Tori said that she wanted to protect the babies. And I'm like,
aww,
sounds like, yep, that sounds good. And then Curtis was stop killing babies.
That's much better.
Works too. Yep.
Also works, yep.
And then the last one, Steph was just like, well, I'll just think of something. And so she had an informative one about when brain activity starts. And I'm like, interesting. My parents had great signs.
What did they say?
Well, theirs was very eye-catching.
Okay.
So they had bright orange signs
mm-hmm.
to coincide with the truth and reconciliation garbage. And so the first one was every child does matter. And the second one was, so don't abort them.
Ooh.
And I'm like,
tag team. I like it. That's the way it goes.
and so yeah, that one pissed off a lot of people.
And all the right ways.
Yeah, it's funny watching my dad at Life Chain, because when people get angry, he'll just yell at them, and everyone else at Life Chain is just like silently standing on the road or like praying the rosary. And they'll be like, F you, and he's like, shame on you, you baby murderer. I'm like,
no holds barred.
no holds barred, and everybody else is like, this is supposed to be silent, and I'm like, who cares? Like,
well done.
It's guilt trip.
Well done, Steven's Papa.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anybody else there from Fairview?
No.
Did they put it in the bulletin?
No, they didn't.
Did they announce it?
No.
Ugh.
I know. I got kind of.
I tried to talk
too. I know.
I literally tried to talk to our pastor.
I know.
Associate pastor, and
Yeah, we were both.
But
we were both disappointed about that. Like,
but in my defense, I did stir up a hornet's nest in
the whole Calvinism?
in the men's chat. Yes, I was like telling my friends about it, and they're like, "Ooh."
Yep.
It's like,
I'm just
do
like,
not touch the sacred cow.
I was telling Levi and Rochelle about that. I'm like, yep. They got into this long thing about Calvinism. They're like, describe Calvinism, like the basics. And I'm like, okay, like this and this and this.
Tulip.
Yep. And they're like, okay. They're like, so it's basically predestination. And I'm like, to a degree, yes.
If you're a 5-point Calvinist, there's no such thing as free will.
Yes.
It's basically what it comes down to.
Yep. So I was like, yep, that's basically it. And I'm like, I don't like that discussion at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to avoid it. Because it has very, like, unless you're a 5-point Calvinist, it's like, we choose, like, there is enough scripture to say, we pick up our cross daily.
Mm-hmm.
We choose to do so. And we choose this day whom we will serve.
Steven, that's just nonsense, man. We're literally robots being pulled around by the puppeteer, by the puppet master, who's responsible for good and evil. It's like, it's wonderful.
Good Danny is the result of many things, but not his own will.
That's right. I literally didn't start that whole discussion. It was God compelling me.
Yeah,
it's how it works. So very, very, very fortunate. But I hope that at least that I showed how to have a discussion in a fair and respectful way.
Yes, you did. You were quite respectful. Yeah, better than some people that I was having conversations with.
In your own life or somewhere else?
Well, just like sometimes, like coworkers are usually okay. It was kind of funny, like this morning, like my coworkers just like, can I ask you some questions? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, bring it.
And so he's asking me like some theological questions, and I'm like, yeah, interesting.
Okay, let's see where we can go with this.
All right. And so, well, it was mostly just like, because he's like, these are the questions which I had, which stumped my parents. and then according to him, when his parents didn't have good answers for them, they kicked him and his brother out. And I'm like,
yeah, sounds a little
okay.
Little sounds a little sketch.
And so I was like, all right. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna I'll try and answer these questions. And so he asked the questions, and I'm like, well, this is like my take on this. And he's like, well, that was a better answer than my parents gave. And I'm like, okay.
That's what you want, Steven. You got to put that little pebble in their shoe.
Sure. Go for
Tactics.
Yeah.
So interesting weekend, but let's cover the craziness that also happened this weekend. Not in our exciting lives.
We're starting off with the good stories. Come on, Danny, get it right.
Well, this was craziness. Like the home run record was officially broken.
That's true. So
without an asterisk.
Yes, why Aaron Judge should be MLB's rightful home run champ now. Verdicted in is not just from the judges' chambers at Yankee Stadium. Aaron Judge, who hit his historic 62nd home run, is now the rightful record holder of the single-season record.
Yeah.
Over Roger Maris, whose 61 home runs in 1961 should have been viewed as the real record for the last 24 years, as well as the previous 37. It surely would have been if not for the 3 enhanced National League sluggers, who decided to game the system by loading up on the best stuff Victor Conte and other assorted aiders, abettors, mad scientists, and crooked trainers had to offer. I get it. A lot of fans want to believe in their heroes. They either don't want to think they wasted their time following the great home run chases of 1998 and 01, or they love numbers so much they accept them as fact when some of them are quite obviously fugazi. Okay? As legit as a street corner 3-card Monty game. Technically, MLB still recognizes Barry Bonds as a record holder, and it's not about to change, but we know better.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, it talks about Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa changed the equation by loading up on, of course, steroids. And I actually have, just about talking about Barry Bonds and steroids, I have a short little clip guaranteed to make you laugh.
About who? Barry Bonds?
Barry Bonds.
Yep, good old Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds superhero movie. It's a spoof movie, but dang, it's funny.
Most of our students are born with their powers. Some, like you, gain them later in life.
Oh, is that?
Yes, it is. When he came to this school, he weighed 130 pounds. Taking up roids, you could do anything.
Laser eyes.
Well done, well done.
And I'm like, okay, this is funny.
All right. So here's where we're at. I'm gonna give you a quick rundown. Like Aaron Judge right now is number 7 on the official list. So number 1, you have Barry Bonds with 73. Then Mark McGwire with 70. Sammy Sosa with 66. Mark McGwire again with 65. Sammy Sosa twice with 64 and 63. And then Aaron Judge. However, all of the people spoken of before are huge asterisks because the question is, were they doping? So Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, all of them are suspected of like heavily doping. So Judge, this is why it's a big deal, because technically, if you just kind of assume that the others are like definitely question marks, then in reality, Judge should be the only person that got that record without the huge question mark about whether or not he's doping. So it's kind of a big deal. I think it's a big deal. What do you think, Steven? Is that a big deal?
Well, like doping in sport is a big deal. Like I expressed before the show started how I disagreed with them calling Lance Armstrong a doper into the same degree of Barry Bonds and these other individuals, because he wasn't using illicit substances. He was just taking his own blood prior to events. So
he's a vampire. That's the problem. They don't like vampires winning championships.
Apparently not.
What's going on here?
So,
but if you put it all in perspective, let's just assume, just for the sake of argument, that all of the other record holders are like basically guilty of doping. That means that Judge is the first player since 1901 to be able to hit this many home runs without any additional potential help. That's a big deal. Like if you take all those other records away, that he did it by just pure skill, training, and talent, which is kind of a big thing. So, congratulations to Aaron Judge. I think he should be very proud. I'm not a humongous fan of the Yankees. I don't know. I don't like New York generally, but like credit where credit is due. This guy is like really going to go down in history, and I think he should.
Yeah,
I think he should definitely get all of the accolades that I think he deserves. So yeah, good job for Judge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good job. But
speaking of
some
another
other good
great
news,
hero of the right.
Yep. Elon
Talk
Musk
about Elon
agrees
Musk
to Twitter buy at $54.20 a share, which is what he agreed to previously. SpaceX and Tesla CEO Elon Musk has proposed to buy Twitter for his original offer of $54.20 a share, reports Bloomberg. He made the proposal in a letter to Twitter on Tuesday. A source who asked to remain anonymous told the outlet. So, of course, Twitter stock halted for the second time today. Twitter stock has halted twice on Tuesday due to volatility, according to Stock Halt Alerts. In April, Twitter filed a lawsuit against Musk to force him to finalize the deal, which he originally agreed to. Of course, in July, Twitter's board announced they would be suing Musk after he said that he would be terminating his buyout deal with a social media giant. In July, he also reportedly said that he was planning to file a counter lawsuit against Twitter to avoid being forced to buy the social media company. After expressing doubts, the makeup of Twitter users included less than 5% automated accounts. Twitter chairman Brett Taylor said the board would be suing Musk. The The board was committed to closing the transaction on the price and terms agreed upon with Mr. Musk. So,
I don't know. I think like what's happening is, okay. So for a quick rundown for anybody who hasn't been following the story, Twitter is corrupt as sin. They are an insanely broken company. Like they have like tons of employees who don't show up. There was that whistleblower who went to the Congress, basically said like their security is a
joke,
super problematic. Was it like 4 or 40% of employees, like a giant amount of their employees have basically complete access to everyone's like personal info, which was a huge security risk. And he said, the amount of bots on the platform are probably massive, which mean, and then that's a huge problem for properly evaluating a company, because that means that false advertising, because they're telling out. So Musk wants to make this company profitable, but in order to make it profitable, you have to, and to buy it at the proper price, you have to get a proper proper disclosure of how many false accounts there are in a platform, because otherwise, he's going to lose a lot of money just in getting it. And also, the big problem is how many skeletons do they have in the closet that they're trying to hide or trying to bury or trying to purge before Musk takes over. So the company itself is a massive it's a massive disaster. It's not even profitable. They know that. They're just basically blowing through money because it's really just a political arm of the government. However, all that said, it looks like Elon Musk could basically turn that platform around and turn it into an actually legitimate
enterprise
option.
that is what it was meant to be, which was what's the term for that? A
public forum?
Yes, a public forum of free speech.
Yep. And to be fair, he can even do it without even changing the terms. He would just have to enforce them equally.
Yep.
And that would literally make the platform much more useful for people. So
I was listening to Timcast IRL. It's like what they currently allow is insane. What they currently will not allow is also insane. Saying that, the Babylon Bee is canceled and they're still suspended.
Yep.
Because of a tweet that they made several months ago, actually was made before Elon Musk agreed to buy the platform in the first place.
Actually, some people say it's the thing that kind of spurred him on to do it. Yeah,
spurred him on to do it. And of course, that entire thing was, this person is not a woman. They're a man. And that
man of the year.
Yeah, man of the year.
Man of the year.
And then, of course, Tim Pool was maybe we should start thinking about youth. He made a post that literally said we should start thinking about euthanizing children for climate change. And that was allowed.
Of course.
And it's well, euthanizing and sterilizing.
Yep.
Euthanizing the poor and then sterilizing the rich. It is that's allowed. What?
Yeah. It's the basic reason is because the term safety is a completely irrational and nonsensical term that the left uses. Safety means safe from any opinions, thoughts, or ideas that they don't like.
Yeah.
So they don't feel safe with a conservative saying women shouldn't be allowed to kill their own children, but they feel totally safe with an idea that women shouldn't have babies at all, and any babies born should probably be eliminated. So we don't overpopulating.
Yeah.
It's basically one-sided and all that. So let's hope that I'm hoping that this means that Musk might maybe make this company, if not at least a free speech platform, at the very least not as censorious as it has been.
Because
let's hope so. So that's good news. I'm hoping that works out for good. And speaking of
good news, and to finish out our good news trio, Candace Owens defends Kanye's White Lives Matter apparel, talks racist truths really threatening the black community. So Daily Wire host Candace Owens on Tuesday defended her friend Kanye after the pair sparked a Twitter meltdown for donning shirts with the phrase "White Lives Matter" emblazoned on the back of their West's Paris fashion show. Owen's a fierce critic of the Black Lives Matter movement and more, generally the Democratic Party, so that outrage should not be sourced by a shirt that says White Lives Matter, but over the real threats to the black community like abortion, obesity, the breakdown of the family, and black-on-black crime, which the author described as racist truth. If Black Lives Matter, then some of these things that we've been talking about on the show, some of the things that I've been talking about throughout my entire political career, would be getting attention, not the t-shirt. They first outlined the devastation abortion has caused for the black community in particular. Just so we're clear, abortion in America has contributed to the greatest decline of the black population since the first black slaves. 20 million black babies have been killed by abortion. But whatever reason, we've convinced ourselves to genocide our own offspring because nobody cares. In fact, they tell you that it is your right to abort 20 black babies. A little. And yet a t-shirt is what got attention last night. In 2012, more black babies were killed by abortion in New York City than born. Yep.
Interestingly enough, again, listening to Timcast IRL, Ian on last night's show was basically saying
he had such weird perspectives.
Yeah, he had a weird perspective. He basically said that, it's like, well, you can't say White Lives Matter because that's racist. I'm like,
well, no, it wasn't even White Lives Matter. It wasn't even White Lives Matter. It was, you can't say it's okay to be white.
Yeah, it's okay to be white. That was the phrase that he was saying.
And I'm like,
yeah, it's racist.
How is that racist? And he's like, well, it's done in a trolling manner. And
yeah, it's like,
well, no, it's pointing out that in modern society, it's not okay to be white. Mm-hmm. And that if you are white in modern society, especially if you're a white and Christian and a man, then you will be heralded as the death and destruction of society by what your ancestors may or may not have done 250 years ago.
Yeah, it's countering white shame.
Yeah,
which is basically the trend.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was that poll. I forget exactly where it was coming from, but they covered it on Steven Crowder yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it was basically like, and they asked these ridiculous questions. It's like, are really whites responsible modern day whites responsible for the atrocities of whites committed 200 years ago? And it's like, well, most rational people would say no. And they're like, that leans towards racism.
That's like, racist.
What? No, that's not racism. You're just dumb.
They basically created a poll that it interprets every response that doesn't align with them as racist. They just found a way to automate it. It's like, hey, do you see color? It's like, no, I'm colorblind. Racist. Bam, like a stamp. It's funny because the idea that and it's funny because I don't consider Ian to be one of those crazy hardcore leftists, but his perspective.
Well, he just does not like talking about race. Right. And then any talk about race is just like, well, we don't want to talk about it, and so any talk about race is going to be racist in some fashion.
Well, it's he believes that he doesn't like the label. It's a label describing two different perspectives on the same kind of political issue, but he also doesn't. He believes that any talk of any kind of distinctions within the different races or supposedly racist is racist. So it's like, oh, by the way, black athletes seem to be very dominant at track and field. It's like racism. It's like, how is that? Because the topic, it's about the differences between races. That's and that's where I'm glad that they pointed out racism is not talking about any the topic of race. Racism is suggesting that one race is superior to the other. Yep. That's basically racism. It's basically prejudice, not stereotypes, prejudice. Mm-hmm. And the left really gets this wrong. But I think what Candace Owens, Kanye West were doing was really excellent, because what they're showing is that they're basically going against what because everyone's scared right now. Everyone's scared of saying things that the left has deemed taboo. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, we have the power because they're both Kanye West and Candace Owens have the power because they're protected by powerful friends, by powerful and all that kind of stuff. So they're basically showing by example the rest of Americans that it is okay to say that, to say these things, to say that you don't have to be ashamed of being a white person, because that is racist to imply that you are a bad person just because of the color of your skin. I love how they did that.
Yep.
That is leading by example, and I hope that more of it happens. And unfortunately, that's the end of our good news stories. Here are the people that are leading by the opposite. Not a good example. Take it away, Stephen.
Or just plain out crazy.
Plain crazy.
Plain crazy.
Here's a white lady who needs another martini.
Too many already.
Yeah.
Too many already. Pelosi, Florida farmers need immigrants to pick the crops. So during remarks at the U.S. Capitol, Nancy Pelosi claimed Florida farmers are saying they need immigrants to pick crops.
Hmm.
With a shortage
Probably
of
show the
workers.
video.
Yep. Let's just, yeah.
I mean, it's better if you hear it than if we can say it.
In our country, and you see even in Florida, some of the farmers and the growers saying, why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick the crops down here. But that doesn't mean that we don't recognize our moral responsibility as well.
Moral responsibility. My gosh, these people listen to themselves.
Yep. Oh
Uh,
my goodness.
so much wrong with that, because I mean, like, if you think about it, she's actually advocating. It's like, oh, these people are breaking the law, like, you know, because they're not supposed to be employing. Like, obviously, the idea that this is happening is probably, like, you know, like, completely, like, bogus. But even if it was true, she's advocating that these people are working in America illegally, and we shouldn't ship them somewhere else because we need them to illegally work in Florida. You know, like, so that's the first part. That's crazy about that. Secondly, it's the racism of low expectations.
Yep.
The idea that she assumes that every person,
Every
who came
illegal
across
immigrant is just going to become a simple laborer.
You're a freaking farmer. Like, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've met so many immigrants all over Calgary, all over, and they have people who are former lawyers, former doctors, former, like, you know, accountants, like, you know, that have skills.
Yeah.
That not everybody, obviously, but like most people have skills in different types. And the idea that you're saying, like, you know, oh, I need someone to clean my toilet, or I need someone to mow my lawn. It's so, like, that is, like, I actually would argue that that's racist, because you're basically assuming that an entire group of people, entire class of people, are only basically like, oh, well, they're just, like, you know, easy workers, so we should just kind of, like, you know, like, throw them there. It's the kind of stuff you can only get away with when you're a Democrat, because you know that the media and nobody else is going to hold you accountable.
Nobody else is going to hold you accountable.
Oh, it's just so stupid. So this woman is just a like, they always made fun of Trump, and they always gave Trump a hard time for his, like, verbal gaffes.
Yep.
Like, the amount of gaffes that these left politicians do on a regular basis is mind blowing.
Yep.
Like, they got nothing on Trump.
Nothing. Yep. But that's not where it ends.
No. We have more.
We have more videos
More
from
dumb.
Biden. Biden gets lost, looks for dead person, rambles incoherently, and yells, "Don't jump!" So yeah, I talked about this story about Jackie Walorski on Thursday. Yeah. So yeah, let's just look at this next one. So Joe Biden will go down here and listen. We'll go down. We're gonna head down. Oh boy, this one's weird. This one is basically incoherent.
I almost imagine them, like, you know, come here, boy, come on, Biden. Like a duppy.
For Secretary Vilsack, Senator, excuse me, I voted you. He's doing a hell of a job.
This guy is literally, like, brain dead, and they're just like, don't jump.
Why?
To a person probably in the balcony, but it's like, what? Like, did you try to be funny?
Oh my goodness! Yep. And then of course Jean-Pierre has the terrible job trying to respond to this. What's
The
this
best
one?
way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
Oh my god. Oh, cringy.
Oh, so painful to watch.
It is
Now,
exceptionally painful to watch.
So a couple of things about Biden. This at the beginning, early on, this was funny. Like you see him like falling downstairs, like going up like the Air Force One. You see him like shoving a pressure or whatever. Like the opposite he said. Like most of these were just kind of funny.
Come on, you have to know the word.
I didn't memorize it. What is it, Stephen?
Throwing it on a shower of pressure.
True and the shoving a pressure. Okay, I just didn't know the first part. Now the problem is this was funny early on because you're just like it's like watching like watching somebody who just constantly hurt themselves. It's like something from America's Funniest Home Videos, like something like that, where you're just like, oh, that's silly grandpa, whatever, thing, right? But the problem is, it's no longer funny because now, we have the potential for a major escalation in a world war, and you have international leaders looking at this guy and thinking, this guy's not right in the head. That doesn't bode well. And when crap hits the fan, which it may very well happen, you may actually have an escalation in war in Ukraine. Like might actually get some European countries being dragged into that conflict. The worst thing possible is to have a president who is not mentally fit to lead the country. Like this is now so irresponsible because it's not just that he's like a fool. It's that he is now. It is dangerous to have a fool in charge. This is just and it portrays to other nations that America is a pushover, weak country who doesn't know, who will basically never be able to stand up for. It's now getting to the point where now this is getting dangerous, and it really should be something that Americans should be screaming for the 25th. Is it 25th Amendment?
Yep.
We can basically say that the president is not fit to perform his duties.
For office.
Yeah, I don't like Kamala Harris. I'm not a big fan of her. I think terrible politician, person, and vice president. But I hate to say it, she's actually lucid.
Yep.
She may not make good decisions, but at least she'll make decisions that are.
And of course, if she becomes president via the 25th Amendment, hopefully by then we'll have the midterms, and she will have her hands tied in everything that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's getting really bad. You have a completely you have a Weekend at Barney situation. It's sad and it's dangerous. So I don't know. We have Nancy Pelosi, who's a terrible leader. You have Joe Biden, who is a completely incapacitated leader, and then you have people like this. This was just tragic because this is a Canadian actress. Do you know where she's from?
No.
So she's not a A-list actress.
She's not prominent.
She's basically been in a couple of minor shows. Her name is Jennifer Gibson. She's been the biggest thing she's been in. It's what's it called? The Dog's Way, which is a big movie that came out. She was on TV show Suits and some smaller shows. But this woman shows how incredibly sad it is when you have been so completely blinded and brainwashed by the messaging on COVID. It's just watch the video, and it just broke my heart. I don't know what it'll do to you, but it's a brutal video.
No, of course. So Gibson first posted the video in July 2021. It was filmed in May. It received little attention until going viral on Twitter last night, and has already received millions of views. And of course, last night was the last day of September. It's not a video I wanted to make, but it's kind of hard to make because I'm watching myself. I see what I'm going to say. So yeah,
2021, where you're not allowed to question the.
Well, this is not a video I want to make, and it's kind of hard to make because as I'm watching myself, I see what I'm going to say, which is I have been diagnosed with Bell's palsy, which is paralysis on one side of the face. For me, it's this side here, the left, obviously. So I got it about 2 weeks after getting my vaccine. And I had a rough go with the vaccine, and I guess still am. But I have to say that I would do it again because it's what we have to do to see people. So, I don't know why I'm making this video, but here's my word smile.
Yep.
Is that not the most tragic thing?
It's exceptionally tragic, but it shows how great, and it demonstrates how significant the brainwashing was. And of course, we look at the people who are still saying the lockdowns. We're still saying that all of this was effective and that there are plenty more people that would have died if we hadn't had the vaccine, we hadn't had the masks, we hadn't had the lockdowns. The brainwashing which was subjected upon the world was so complete, so immense, and so censorious against anything that disagreed that you had to expect that something like this was going to happen.
Yeah, and there's so many people out there who had injuries like that. Who basically said, oh, I'm glad I got the vaccine. So, I mean, just think about the logic of this. Imagine taking some kind of experimental medicine or drug or something like that, and it results in you having to get both of your legs amputated, and then coming out and saying well, I'm glad I got that experimental drug, even though I lost both my legs. Or imagine somebody, getting a drug and going blind, and be like, well, I'm really glad I got that malaria medicine, experimental malaria medicine. At least I didn't get malaria, even though you're blind. Or something like that. Like the insanity that you have to believe in order to believe that you're better off with a potentially life-altering or life-destroying injury, and to be like, oh, I do it again in a heartbeat. It's
because that's what the government told us we had to do.
This is just so crazy. This is how crazy people have become, that they would literally think that this is a good thing. I take one for the, so that a disease that I barely have a chance of actually dying from is worth avoiding. Just to get a massive injury. So it's brutal. I couldn't believe that when I saw it. I was like, wow.
That's really crazy. But things that are also crazy.
Crazy doesn't stop there.
Yeah, the craziness just does not end this week. And so now we talk about something that we briefly mentioned in another story. I think we were talking about the Golden Globes. No, it was the Emmys. It was the Emmys.
Okay.
Because it was talking about that musician who was getting, and she's like, I'm so glad that I'm getting this award for all the LGBTQ plus people, blah, blah, blah. And then Billy came up and make sure you watch Bros because everybody in the movie is LGBTQ plus. And that's the first time that's ever happened. And it's a rom-com and it's going to be great. Haha. And so now, of course, he's blaming the box office flop on straight people because he just hates straight people. So, quote, that's just the world that we live in. Unfortunately, the Bros writer star tweeted after the film fizzled on its opening weekend. So he's sounding off on the gay rom-coms for box office, blaming straight people for not showing up and the lack of ticket sales. Even with glowing reviews, great Rotten Tomatoes scores, a cinema score, etc., straight people, especially in certain parts of the country, they just didn't show up for Bros. Eichner, who wrote, produced, and stars in the film, talk about narcissism, said in a lengthy Twitter rant, and that's disappointing, but it's what it is. That's just how Billy Eichner talks. It's really annoying.
He's really bad. Actually, one of the tweets that he sent out, he said, everyone who isn't a homophobic weirdo should go see Bros tonight. We'll have a blast. So basically, he told half the country, because this is what he thinks.
Yeah.
He believes that, any Trump supporter or anybody Trump's, anyone who's not hardcore Democrat left. So he basically told half the country don't come see my movie. I'm like, yeah, I wonder why nobody. But But actually, like, what's your theory, Stephen? What's your theory?
Why this film failed?
Why this film failed?
Well, because you're marketing the movie to a very gay rom-com. What's that going to appeal to? It's really only going to appeal to flamboyant gay people.
Yep.
Like what is the typical market for rom-coms? Women. Do women want to watch a gay rom-com? Heck no. Because that's
women want to watch a rom-com and they'll drag their boyfriends along with them.
Yep. Straight guys are not going to watch Bros.
No.
Although eventually we might suffer and put ourselves through a how terrible is this movie and maybe a try to laugh video watching Bros and just being like, okay, we're definitely going to skip some parts because we don't want to watch a gay orgy. But yes, a try to laugh sequence because I think that'd be actually kind of funny to be like, that was uncomfortable.
Well, and like, I don't know if you you've seen some of the things happening on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
So Rotten Tomatoes, one of the things that's been happening, and just like a little shout out to people, just so in case you're not following along, is like obviously one of the big telltale signs of a movie, like on Rotten Tomatoes, and whether or not it's like they've tampered with the ratings or with the critics, is when you have an extremely high rating on the tomato meter, which is like the critics, and you have the complete opposite reaction from the fans or from audience. Now, what's been happening lately, and I'll say this, like I don't know if you can actually go to Rotten Tomatoes really quick, Stephen. Just go to Rotten Tomatoes, look up Bros. And by the way, this has been happening. People have noticed, and they've been pointing it out. This has been happening with shows like the Rings of Power, with I don't know Rings of Power, but like a lot of shows they've mysteriously been getting like insanely high audience, which should not be the case for movies that are controversial and that do not have widespread that they're like amazing movies. Look at Bros.
90%,
91%,
and 91
audience score. That is extremely suspect when you have a movie that is controversial like this. I'm not saying it has to be controversial because it's gay.
And of course, all of these critics, so it's like all critics, fresh. Oh, one that's not fresh. Okay, well, and then audience reviews. There are no featured audience reviews for Bros at this time.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah. Horrible, just horrible.
Yeah.
Like it's either 5 stars or it's like zip.
Yeah.
So much promotional material for this awful film that made me wish I could submit a restraining order on intellectual property.
This has been happening too with movies like obviously you saw like all the negative feedback for the Woman King.
Yep.
That big movie. I don't know if you can look it up really, really quick. Look up The Woman King. The Woman King got like better audience scores than Avengers Endgame, which is mind blowing. It's like that movie should
audience score 99%.
99% fresh. That means that 99% of the people.
Okay, let's just do like we're comparing it to Endgame is one thing. Let's let's do it to the movie which broke the Oscars.
Broke the Oscars? Which one?
Return of the King.
Oh, the
Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Return of the King. Okay.
Like broke the Oscars because I think they won 13 in 1 year. 86%. Like easily
one of the
best movies of all time. And it's 13% lower than The Woman King. Give me a break. That's nonsense.
So what a lot of people are theorizing now is that obviously Rotten Tomatoes had a problem because they could, Hollywood could manipulate and coerce and threaten the critics to give bad reviews. but they had a big problem with the audience because people with audience are not coerced by these studios, so they're
not paid.
Now what they're doing, and this is happening with Rotten Tomatoes, this is happening with Amazon, like the reviews and all that kind of stuff. They are messing with the audience reviews in order to try to like manage the damage that those bad reviews can cause. So if in the past you could always rely on the audience score to be a more accurate gauge, not anymore. So I'm sorry, like not anymore. You're not getting that kind of like, you know, honest thing. Rotten Tomatoes is messing with all of their responses, and they're basically giving you like, you know, completely and totally nonsensical. Yeah, so this is an example of what it used to be.
What it used to be. Yep.
79%, which is nonsense because this movie was not
terrible.
Like amazing movie. It wasn't horrible, but it was
this is Captain Marvel, by the way, for those who
Captain Marvel. Yes. But it
79%
got like
tomato meter,
almost
and then 45% audience score because the audience hated it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so cringy.
Mm-hmm.
It was brutal. But
I don't know if you can see The Last Jedi. Can you see The Last Jedi?
Okay, fine. Last one.
Last one.
I misspelled tomatoes, but that's
what have you done?
that was more me like spelling it faster. 42% Last Jedi.
But look at the critic score.
Yeah, critic scored 91%.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
This movie was a narrative and like
it was a disaster.
It was a disaster. Like people who watched it honestly, it's like, no, this movie was not a good movie. But it got 91%. 91% for like a movie that was not a good movie.
Yeah. This one's What is a Woman still only has 6 reviews, but 96% audience score. But like that one you actually know is legit.
Yeah.
Like everyone who I've heard of has watched this movie that wasn't like everyone who's watched this movie, because you actually have to be a Daily Wire member to watch it. You're typically conservative. And even those who like critics will watch it because they can't find anything wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like genuinely good movie. Yep. And Rotten Tomatoes, of course, can influence it. Like the 6 reviews, I think one of them is negative.
Yeah.
Like YouTube channel. But everyone else is just like, yep, it's good.
Mm-hmm. So it shows you. Don't trust these sites that are trying to tell you, like, you know, how good movie is. You can't trust them anymore.
No.
Because they're manipulating critics, and now they're manipulating audience scores.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't trust them anymore. So, again, but bros, they're saying, like, these Rotten Tomatoes scores are so great. I'm like, yeah, because
you influenced them.
Because Rotten Tomatoes is a completely...
They've been bought and paid for.
Don't even like look at Rotten Tomatoes anymore. They're just garbage now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but on to the last story of the last person saying dumb things.
Yeah, something that they could wish they could buy off.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So White House defends Kamala Harris's hurricane relief equity remarks.
Of course.
So they're defending the vice president, Kamala Harris, over her recent comments that equity needs to be at the center of the response to hurricanes. Controversy erupted after Harris was asked during the Democratic National Committee event about the White House's efforts to respond to climate change-related weather disasters within the U.S. It's in our lowest income communities and communities of color that they're most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of our own making. She continued. So we have to address this in a way that's about giving resources based on equity.
Okay. Imagine for a second that you show up at the site of a gigantic hurricane.
Yep.
Okay? A hurricane doesn't pick, I'm going to go attack the black community and I'm going to leave the white community. It doesn't pick. It just goes wherever it wants and destroys whatever. Now, imagine for a second that you come there and we're like, I'm from the government. Like, I come with funding to help you recover after the thing. It's like, okay, so who's going to get the funding?
Okay, cool.
You're black, you get funding. Oh, you're white, yeah, you don't get no funding. Sorry.
Yep.
Oh, Latino, definitely get some funding. It's like, oh, Asian, no, sorry, no funding for you. because you clearly haven't been quite as impacted because your skin color is the incorrect color. So you clearly have privilege. Even though your house completely and totally destroyed, this black person's house got a little bit of light damage.
Got a window shattered.
They're black, so
they have to be first in terms of equity and redistribution.
Like, imagine that. Actually, a good example of that stupidity of that approach is here in Calgary. When we had the floods, Stephen, who were the people who were more disproportionately affected by the flooding?
The rich.
Rich or poor? Yes,
the
rich. The rich. Why? Why is it the rich?
Because because the rich have houses that are along the river.
Go figure! Their riverfront properties was more expensive, hence they're the ones impacted. It was like, oh no, the poor. In Florida, most of the people that are going to get the brunt of the damage
are riverfront are oceanfront properties.
Oceanfront properties, which are rich people, and usually are going to be the white people. But they don't deserve any funding or help or anything.
We have to focus inland, which was barely hit by the hurricane because that's the majority black communities.
And yet, the funniest thing is obviously there's going to be a demographic differences all over the place, but the storm doesn't pick and choose. So imagine if, let's say 90% of the damage happened to hit white communities, and these are really poor white communities. It's oh, you don't get funding because you have the wrong skin color. It's that is insanely racist. Only a complete demagogue like Kamala Harris can get away with a comment. It's just brutal.
Yeah.
So I wish we could admonish them all. These are people who are just absolutely so out of touch with reality, and with the amount of evil that they're doing. It's just venom. It's terrible. So let's move on because
it's gonna piss you off.
I don't want to spend any time on Kamala Harris and
let's move on from hurricanes and equity and racism to nuclear war.
Ooh, that sounds like a much fun topic.
Yep. United States and South Korea use militaries to respond to North Korea firing missiles over Japan.
Uh-oh.
So, U.S. and South Korea fired several missiles late on Tuesday in a response to North Korea's provocation in firing a ballistic missile over Japan. Japanese government broadcast a warning across the country early Tuesday morning local time after North Korea fired the missile in the direction of the northern part of the country in apparent escalation. The missile eventually flew overhead and continued into the Pacific Ocean. It was the fifth missile launch in the past 10 days and the 23rd launch since the start of the year. U.S. and South Korea fired 4 surface-to-surface missiles in response to North Korea's latest nuclear provocation, according to a report from the Yonhap news agency. The U.S. Embassy in Tokyo promoted Japan's warning on Monday following the missile launch, saying there was a possibility it's heading toward Japan. Videos online showed air raid sirens blasting throughout the country, urging people to take cover pending the incoming strike. So here's a video. Yep. Air raid sirens wail in cities and towns over Japan after North Korea fired a ballistic missile over the country. That is an interesting sign. An interesting siren.
Yeah.
And nobody's really taking it seriously.
Well, it sounds like people are trying to move quickly, but not running.
Kind of looks like they're just, I guess they're proceeding in an orderly fashion.
They're Japanese. They're not Americans.
Americans would be like, ah!
Yeah, that's freak. Well, I mean, for good reason, because Americans are not used to having these kind of things, right? The only other place I can think of that has regular air raid sirens, real fear of missiles attacks is Israel. They constantly have air raid sirens, and they have minutes usually to get to shelter because these missiles.
In Israel, you running.
Yeah, you're running because you know that those missiles could come very quickly, and sometimes you don't have time to even get to a shelter. So, this is a really problematic thing because, I mean, not only are tensions really high with the Russia-Ukraine war, but everyone's scared right now of potentially another major conflict flaring up with China. Because let's face it, China there's this weird alliance between China and
Russia.
North
Korea and Russia.
Yeah, because remember, Stephen, do you remember that time when Trump was president? North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un
Yep.
was threatening to bomb Guam. He was making these big.
Well,
big
it mentions it in this article.
Hmm.
It says when former President Trump was in the White House, he threatened North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un to knock off making threats against the United States. North Korea best not make any more threats against the United States, Trump said. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
I like the way that Crowder does it. Like,
I know.
North Korea, they don't have to make any more threats in the United States.
Well, this is Trump.
Oh, this is Trump saying. Okay, I thought it was
Come
like
on.
a
I'm not.
North Korean dictator saying
No,
this.
this is. Yeah. They will be
My bad.
met like fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening, and as I said, they'll be met with fire, fury, and frankly, power. The likes of which this world has never seen before.
The best power.
The best.
Everyone tells me that we have the best power. Like, I don't know. I don't say it. They say it. But the thing is, back then, when North Korea was threatening these things and threatening Guam, like Trump was saying, you mess with Guam, and
We're gonna blow your socks off.
We're gonna blow you away. And like North Korea was like, I'll try it. But then China actually came out and said, like, if
in a war against, if they engage in war, we'll join North Korea.
If North Korea tries this, they're on their own. And North Korea was like, what? What?
Yeah.
And they were like, what? Like they suddenly backed out.
China wasn't ready.
Yeah, well, because they miscalculated and didn't realize that China was not going to back them up.
Like China and North Korea and Russia, back when Trump was president, nobody really knew what Trump was going to do in terms of this. It's just like they will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. It's just like,
yeah,
what are you going to do, bro?
That sounds scary.
Yeah, it's like, that's a serious response. Whereas, like, you look at Biden's response to global conflict and global initiatives, and he's just like, well, we're not going to respond to if there's a small incursion. It's like, that's great. Which,
Just
of course,
hand it
is
over.
now creating this threat from Russia's Poseidon nuclear torpedo drone. Can it cause a nuclear tsunami? Reports allege that Russia is moving to test the Poseidon nuclear torpedo drone, but the Pentagon has no information. So currently it has no information on the testing of Russia's Poseidon nuclear torpedo. That would change the United States' strategic posture, he said. A U.S. military official said in a U.S. Defense Department briefing. Times said the weapon could be tested in the Black Sea, where the Russian Navy has been launching ballistic missile attacks on Ukrainian positions to limited effect. The Russian state media noted the items of the Poseidon has reporting as the fears of NATO of a superweapon. It's a terror weapon. It's designed to kill or traumatize the inhabitants of the American coastal cities, the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Christopher Ford. So it's Poseidon of the Ocean Multipurpose System. Status 6 is an underwater unmanned vehicle that can be launched by a submarine. According to the popular mechanics, it can travel up to 6,200 miles at speeds up to 56 knots, which is just over 100 kph. So it's described by Western media as a weapon of the apocalypse. It's uncertain how heavy the thermonuclear payload is. Estimates have ranged from 2 to 100 megatons. Each megaton is 1,000 kilotons. And of course, the nuke that was dropped on Nagasaki was 21 kilotons.
Yeah.
So even if it's 2 megatons, it's still immense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the idea is that a nuclear like bomb has a certain extent of how much damage you can do to the city. But the idea with this is that you can trigger a massive
nuclear tsunami.
Nuclear tsunami that would not so. Let's say theoretically, worst case scenario, they
detonates off the coast of, say,
New York,
Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah.
No, like somewhere like on New York coast, you're going to hit a ton of major cities from New York, Boston to like Richmond, major cities all across the eastern seaboard. Or like if you do it on the West Coast, you're going to hit like Los Angeles, just a ton of cities, because the New York would be wiped out with a gigantic tsunami.
Like if it hit right here, if it had a massive tsunami, just depending on how big it is, like if it's 2 kilotons, then it would probably hit some of New York, some of Philly, and Probably wouldn't go as far as Washington, D.C.
No, because Delaware's in the way. But
Delaware is in the way. Dang you, Biden.
He's protected. But it would hit a lot of major cities, right? Like even if you go down south, like south of that area, you have all these major coastal towns.
Yeah.
Like you have Jacksonville, you have Charleston, down south. You have so many cities that could be. So the idea
probably
that
right
a tidal wave can hit so much. Now, from what I heard, I don't know if they've ever had a successful test of these weapons. I'm not sure if it's theoretical right now. Now we know for sure that they've had successful tests, and like the Moab bomb, we know that one works.
Yep.
But the question is whether or not this weapon is fully capable of what the theory says it is. I've never heard or seen if this weapon has actually been successfully tested. So
I think they're still in the process of actually testing it out, just because this is a weapon that's designed to detonate in water.
Yeah.
And so you really have to be in fairly secluded waters to test this.
Hence why they're in the Arctic Ocean right now.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Yes, we will see. But the threat of such events happening is only made greater if the Ukraine joins NATO. So, of course, China warns the United States of grave consequences if the Ukraine joins NATO. So, could face severe consequences, including the prospect of nuclear war if it allows Ukraine to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, drawing the 30-member alliance into the country's conflicts with Russia. In the Sunday editorial of the state-owned Global Times, Beijing warned that allowing the country into the alliance, as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has requested, would lead to an inevitable escalation in the conflict, prompting Russian President Vladimir Putin's threats to use nuclear arms against the West. While unlikely, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan stated in a White House briefing that NATO should delay talks on allowing the country into the alliance. The newspaper warned all European countries will tremble under the shadow of a possible nuclear war should it take place, and calls for a Western alliance to withdraw from its long-standing involvement in Eastern Europe. In that case, there will be no security for anyone, not for Ukraine and not for the world, the newspaper wrote. Instead of pursuing resolutions to end the conflict, Washington has, over and over again, displays the United States is charging toward the other direction, fanning the flames of war.
Yeah, everything about this conflict seems to be pointing to the idea that the all these countries, from the European, the EU countries to America to Canada and all these countries, I don't know if you heard recently, the U.S. Congress. They recently passed another spending bill, sending a crap ton of money back to Ukraine. They just keep funding them. Keep funding more and more money to help Ukraine when their own people are America, their own people are suffering. Canada, our people are struggling. But no. We got to send money to Ukraine, to a foreign country, in a conflict that really has very little to do with us. And they are intentionally stifling and preventing any attempts at a peace deal. Because they don't want a peace deal. So the problem here is that we have a collection of countries that basically fit the definition of warmongers, because they want the war to continue. This war is beneficial to a lot of countries and to what a lot of countries want to happen. Partially because of the food insecurities that they're creating, partially because of the energy insecurities that they're causing. The problem here is that all of these countries are trying to say Putin bad, and that's pretty much as simplistic as the narrative is. But in reality, everyone involved in this has dirty hands
and is playing this improperly.
Yeah, because every country, I obviously mentioned this before, there's already been confirmed. Boris Johnson went to Ukraine early in the year and basically told Zelensky, you better not pull out of this war and try to talk a peace deal with Russia. They basically nuked any possibility of a peace talk because all these countries want a national disaster to hit their own people. These people don't care about their citizens. It's crazy. Modern day, you have politicians who are actively creating the disasters that are going to annihilate their own people. Right now, we're looking at a winter where most of the people in Europe are going to suffer horrible consequences because their own countries have created this massive mess.
Mm-hmm. Well, the
So,
winter of what was it? Sickness and
despair, I
death.
guess. Yeah.
Like Biden was saying last year in 2021
Yeah, he
that
was.
it would be a winter of sickness and death because people haven't taken the vaccine. No.
Yeah.
This is going to be a winter of starvation and death.
Yeah. We're going to have some horrible reports of people dying. Because not only are they going to have like energy shortages, these are artificially created, by the way,
Yeah.
but they're also going to have food insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Combine those two together. They're calling the populations of Europe.
Yep.
It's insane. This is the world
Well,
we live in.
they're starting with Europe.
Yeah.
And then there's already talk about, of course, food shortages and supply chain issues in the United States, and there will be, of course, here in Canada as well.
Of course. All by design. It's just insane what these people are
Scary
doing.
that
So,
it's by design.
yeah. So, by the way, if you haven't yet, maybe good time to start looking into. And this is just a basic precaution that everyone should take. Start looking into buying those things like My Patriot Supply, like those kind of things where you buy food for like a month.
Yep.
Sustain yourself for at least a month or something like that. Because honestly,
Safe and ready meals.
well, at least at least because you don't know what
You don't
like,
know what's coming. And of course,
Yeah.
like if you can't invest in safe and ready meals or Patriot Supply, then non-perishable goods.
Yeah.
Like, not that we've been like prepping,
Mhm.
but yeah, we have like 3 or 4 weeks worth of canned goods that we have stored up because it's like,
Yeah.
well, just in case something happens.
it's a good idea because really, like even if you have a couple of days worth, because I mean, there is the possibility in cities all across North America that you may have power outages.
Yeah.
And if you have a power outage for several days, you have some idea of how
something.
you're going to
Yeah,
how you're going
something.
to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, that might happen.
Yep.
So let's move from these doom and gloom stories and
The
these
world
like
destruction
these
to the
verbal
destruction of
idiots.
the innocent.
Yes, let's do it.
So Vermont girls volleyball team banned from their own locker room so trans player can use space.
Yeah, we know where they stand in the
No big
pecking
deal.
order.
Public school in Central Vermont is facing scorn after displacing the athletes of the girls volleyball team from their own locker room so a trans player can use the space instead. Controversial move, one that has resulted in students and parents speaking out, is a result of Vermont's education policy, which states students can play sports and use locker rooms based on their desired sexual and gender identities, according to WCAGs.
Of course.
In addition to drawing local attention, the story has earned scrutiny from national figures like Reverend Franklin Graham and apparently Caitlyn Jenner, who is now a Fox News commentator.
Of course, yeah.
So that's just great.
What do you think
And of
about the
course,
story?
like it doesn't list in this story.
Mhm.
It doesn't list in this story that they were not just locked out of their change room. They were told that they had to change one at a time in single stalls. That's absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, this is a parent. We allowed a child who is biologically the opposite sex, male, to go into a locker room where biologically girls were getting fully changed, the mother said. The biological child was not changing and sat in the back and watched the girls getting changed. That made them feel uncomfortable. And so the girls felt violated and unprotected. When parents and kids went to the school principals, they were told it was a law. There was nothing they could do about it. The law gives them room to protect all, and they did not. And of course, one of the volleyball players impacted said her concerns, as well as those of other athletes and parents, was reportedly dismissed by school officials, who said state law dictates transgender athletes are permitted to use whichever locker room they prefer.
Yeah. Okay,
So-
so let's take a second. Think about this logically, because let's God forbid that anybody should, but let's think about it logically. What is the reason? What is the rationale that the lunatic left, creates these transgender policies? What's the reason? Oh, it's because they want to protect transgender people from being bullied or from being made to feel bad, right? Why do they do that? Because they know that transgender are at a very high rate of suicide. Okay, so the whole purpose of these bathroom laws is to avoid offending or triggering transgender individuals from feeling really bad, from feeling unacknowledged or unloved, whatever it is that you want to say. You want to make them
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff, right? It's about their feelings. But then take that. We're going to create a policy that makes one better about themselves and that they don't feel like they're left out. And then we're going to enforce it by completely and totally ignoring the feelings and any insecurities or anything like that of all the girls. This is how you're enforcing it.
Mm-hmm.
The double standard in this entire approach is so insane, stupid, that it would be hilarious if it wasn't so tragic.
Yeah.
Because this is what they're doing. It's like, we need these policies because, individuals might feel bad. What about the 30, 40, 50 girls or 100 girls
Screw
feel
them.
bad about this? Well, they don't count. Who cares about them?
They're not a victim group. They're privileged elite.
Well, and even if you argue that, they're not as well, like, let me give you an example. Let's talk about a single girl who got raped, brutally raped by some boy. Because remember, love to bring this up when it comes to abortion, but this doesn't count in these cases. A girl who got raped, horribly raped, and has trauma, being forced to go into a bathroom with a person that she knows is a man who has the physical ability to rape her.
Yeah.
Whether or not you say it's not a real, it's a girl, but this person has the tools to be able to rape her.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
You're saying
by the actions of this individual, by all accounts, this person was sitting in the back watching them get changed, and basically just they're participating in voyeurism. That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so their interactions and their behavior is not one of, I'm living my truth and I'm just trying to live my life. It's like, no. You are participating in voyeurism and you are finding future targets of who to harass, threaten, and potentially assault.
Yeah.
Because this is the behavior of that type of individual.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, obviously, Leah Thomas. One of the things that I found interesting about Leah Thomas is that, there's the whole statement is that Leah Thomas is a girl. But guess who Leah Thomas is attracted to? Women. Kind of funny how that works, because this is the house of cards that they created. That not only can you be whatever gender you want to be, but you can also have a sexual orientation that is totally up to you. So imagine having a male in a girl's bathroom, claims to be a female, but this male is attracted to females.
Yep.
You'll think that that's a recipe for potential abuse or potentially somebody getting hurt or somebody getting injured. And even if you do get injured or raped by this individual, there's
nothing you can do about it.
You're basically creating a massive opportunity for abusers and for deviants and for all sorts of horrible people to basically do all sorts of horrible things. It's incredible the kind of things that they're doing. Now, that is the lunacy of what they're doing, girls in in their own spaces. But this continues because one of the things that the transgender community loves to say is that if you don't agree or if you disagree with all of their claims about reality, that you're basically what is it? What do they say? You're erasing us, or you're saying
you're denying our existence.
You're denying our existence. Funny enough, speaking of those standards, the very people who cry out and scream about you're denying our existence are the very people
denying the existence of this.
Deny the existence of another far more marginalized group. Yes, they don't even hide it. They literally say that is not a thing. These people don't exist. It's insane. But here is a great example of.
So, new documentary Detransition Diaries exposes the lies of gender ideology. 3 women interviewed about their experiences growing up female, believing they could find happier lives by using medical technology to try and be male. Each offer compelling testimony. The fight over gender ideology has made its controversial way to schools, courts, legislatures, and hospitals. The harm done to children, women, and their rights to autonomy for years has continued. For years, under the guise of compassion. As factions form and people dig in their heels, it's easy to forget the people who've been intimately affected, harmed, and their lives unalterably changed in unwelcome ways. The Detransition Diary, Saving Our Sisters, is a new documentary that listens to young women who went through medical gender transition with cross-sex hormones and surgeries and came to regret it. 3 women were interviewed about their experiences growing up female, believing they could find happier lives. Is this the trailer for it?
Yeah, just show a quick clip.
From when I was very young, around 5 years old, I felt like I was limited in what I could do in life as a girl or as a woman.
By the time I was about 13, I was starting to feel really depressed. I started self-harming. I started developing an eating disorder. I was introduced to a belief system. If you don't fit in, that's a sign that you're trans. If you don't like your body, then that's a sign that you're trans. And if you transition, all of these problems will be fixed.
When I was 22, I started injecting testosterone into my body so that I could medically transition from female to male.
Pretty much as soon as I turned 18, I made an appointment. I went to Planned Parenthood. One appointment took about an hour.
I called Planned Parenthood. We had about a 30-minute phone conversation, and then I was prescribed testosterone over the phone.
I was saying stuff like, oh, I think that I'm gonna be so much happier after I transition. Like, I'm really depressed now and I'm suicidal, but everything's gonna be so much better after I transition.
I have to say there was a small, underlying anxiety, beneath the excitement that was a fear.
You can probably stop, Stephen.
Yeah.
It's a long trailer, but yeah, definitely watch the trailer. It's amazing to me that Planned Parenthood, if you just step out of our current time in society, step outside of it and just think about this. Planned Parenthood, I think, is one of the most horrifying criminal organizations in human history.
Yep.
The amount of literal harm,
pure evil that comes out of these facilities.
Not only are they butchering babies by the truckload, they've been caught
abusing and warping and manipulating and what's the word for it? It's
while you're thinking about it.
While
While you're thinking of the term, they've been they've been caught trafficking human body parts and altering their own abortions in order to get those body parts. They've been caught lying to women, covering up rapes and in abuse by adults and by pimps and by all that kind of stuff. And they've been guilty of basically not giving women access or ability to go to the hospital trying to cover their own butts. This entire organization is one of the most horrible organizations in American history. I think it'll go down as probably one of, if not the greatest human rights abuser in as an organization in American history. It's crazy. And now they're transitioning towards basically being the go-to place for people who are trans, who are told they're trans. But right now, one of the big things, you see this all across the world, guy that we know and love and all that kind of stuff, when he was arguing against the conversion therapy law here in Canada, conversion therapy law here in Canada, he was basically trying to blow the whistle and say, these people exist. I don't care what you're told. They because the people in Parliament, they didn't think that there was such a thing, person who regretted their transition. They thought that was a myth. And then to their shock, they actually presented several people who were brave enough to actually say, no, we exist.
Yeah.
This is a thing. You have to consider it. So it's amazing to me that our governments are actually they're gaslighting these victims, because these are victims. These are
they are
legitimate victims. And these are by no means the only ones. There is going to be a tsunami. Speaking of tsunamis, there's going to be a tsunami of people who are going to grow up and they're going to be pissed at what was done to them by these lying, cheating, and totally money hungry people who basically abuse
money
people.
grabbing bastards.
Because that's what happened in Nashville, that Nashville hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
That expose. So, yeah, and this doesn't stop here. It's in Australia. They're doing something even.
Well, it's
just
like
as
the
egregious,
manipulation and the evil of our world and our culture has been getting worse for some time.
Yeah.
And this is only continuing in that trend. So Australia
Oh,
bill opens up the door to forced vaccinations. Western Australia, one of the most radical states down under, has passed a bill that grants COVID-19 officers authorization to strip people from their homes and vaccinate them against their will. The Emergency Management Amendment legislation passed last year. It includes powers of officers in relation to persons exposed to SARS-CoV-2 virus. Australia, just when we thought COVID was over, new legislation included in WA allows officers to break into your home without a warrant, force people into a quarantine facility, and force vaccinate them against their will.
That sounds safe.
Well, the COVID declaration is enforced. The purposes of limiting the spread of the virus, and authorized COVID-19 officers may direct any person who has been exposed or any class of person who may have already been exposed to the SARS-CoV virus or to any of the following. The Western Australia bill reads: to remain in an area specified by the officer, remain quarantined from other persons for such period as in such reasonable manner as is specified by the officers, to submit to infection prevention and control procedures within such reasonable period, and in such reasonable manner as specified by the officer. Earlier this month, they dropped the quarantine requirements for people exposed to the virus. Effective October 14th, mandatory isolation was one of the last restrictions to be lifted. Jeez. But this new bill suggests that if another emergency is declared, Western Australians could be forcibly removed from their homes and compelled to submit to whatever infection prevention and control procedures are deemed reasonable. Yeah, forced vaccination isn't directly stated in the bill. The bill's vague wording leaves it open to such interpretation. Well, it's the same way here in Canada. The vague wording of these things leaves it open to interpretation, and it can be taken in any way that these individuals want.
Yeah. The problem is that the second you give this is all you give the government a certain power, they will never take it back.
You give the government a cookie.
Yeah. I met somebody on last week that didn't know. I'm like, you got to read that book. You got to get it. Remember, the Patriot Act?
Yep.
Came into power after when 9/11 still in force. They haven't taken it away. They still have that power.
Yep. And who is it? Assange and
Julian Assange and Edward Snowden.
Yeah, Snowden. They're both under threat of execution.
Yeah.
Because of the Patriot Act. Now, of course, I could sort of understand. We talked about this a long time ago with Tate. Mm-hmm. Julian Assange, I can sort of understand because what he did could technically have caused the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands, of servicemen. But what Snowden did? Are you kidding me?
Not even close. The government should be the one that should be dragged through the mud, or at least tarred.
Because all Snowden did was saying, you guys are the government is saying they're not monitoring you. The government is monitoring everything you flipping do.
They basically,
and he had the receipts to prove it. And they're like, yep, the Patriot Act, you're under threat of death. And he fled the country.
Yeah.
And it's like, this dude did a public service.
He did. He should be a hero, actually. Yeah. Anything. He should be a hero. But the problem is, the Patriot Act is still in force. Go to an airport right now. You get on the plane. All of those things that are meant to protect you, and they're just theater. We all know this.
Yeah.
But when did they come into play? After 9/11.
Yeah.
And they're still doing them. They're still doing these things. It is insane. When the government basically said, we can lock you down at any time, they basically they breached. They basically made a line that you can't cross, and now they crossed it. So when the government said, "Oh, we can force you to take a vaccine, otherwise you'll lose your job," they crossed the line that you can't go back.
Yep.
Now it's been the new president
set in stone.
And when right now in Canada, euthanasia laws, they keep repealing all of the protections Guess where that's going to lead? If they keep going,
suicide.
No, they're going to go eventually to a place where the government can literally decide
Who
to
lives and
execute
who dies.
you when they deem it like
when they deem you not worth saving.
Yeah, actually, no, it's not even like that. They could just decide.
Well, they deem you a burden.
Yeah, they deem you a burden or a threat to.
Well, of course, like we know where that's leading because, of course, it's leading to. Well, are you a contributing member of society? Nope. Then we're gonna off you.
Yeah.
Like there was that guy. Oh, I think it was in the Netherlands, and he was depressed, and the government's like, well, you're depressed, and it doesn't seem like you're gonna get any better, so we're just gonna euthanize you. And he's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And like, the courts basically said he had no rights.
Yeah.
Like just monstrous.
Yeah. And here in Canada, there was a story recently about a man who was, he obviously is medically like he has a lot of medical problems and issues and all that. He needs support in order to live. The government has, the reason why they installed euthanasia and why they're leaning so hard on it is because it's a cheap way to take care of, like, they don't want, they know that they've created a mess with their healthcare system. Our healthcare system is going downhill. It's not sustainable. And it's basically, it's not, we're basically like the Titanic heading towards the iceberg. Yeah. They know it because in 30 years, like the amount of money that we have to spend for healthcare is going to be like insanely high. We're not going to be able to sustain it. So how do they solve this problem? They're basically making it so that it's like the cheaper option is just to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why they're not spending money in increasing the ability to care for people. And instead, they're giving people like, well, we're not going to pay for you to be supported and compassionate thing. We're going to only pay for basically like a cheap way to kill. And that's what they're doing. So we're not moving in a good way. And our government is now becoming our greatest enemy because they're literally hurting people and they want applause for it. And this next story basically shows this.
Yep, it does indeed. So, experts highlight mental health crisis in youth caused by lockdowns. Of course, we knew this was coming. Experts say government lockdowns and COVID-19 mandates have left children with unprecedented psychological and social scars. According to Blacklock's reporter, testimonies by pediatricians at the House of Commons Health Committee reveal how severe mental health among youth has become. We found older youth were statistically more likely to report severe difficulties in the psychiatric domain, said the U of BC Department of Pediatrics clinical scientist, Dr. Queen Doan? Sure. According to Doan, a survey of 424 youths found the majority were experiencing psychological difficulties as a result of pandemic measures. Youth were not attending any formal education programs, either at home or in person at the time where school would normally be in session, were twice more likely to report greater severity in the psychiatry and youth health domains compared to youth who were in full-time in-person school, explained Doan.
Jeez, look at that stat about the disorders.
About the what?
Eating disorders. The stat about the eating disorders.
Oh, yeah, the number of students entering inpatient programs for eating disorders shot up 90%.
90%.
Children and youth have borne the brunt. Their developments, physical, emotional, social, spiritual, has been impacted severely by learning loss, reductions in access to physical activity, social isolation, and delays in access to care. The data is striking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we knew this, you and I and many others knew this was coming. We knew that the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of these effects will last for a lifetime. And we were the ones who were trying to call it out, trying to say, nope, this is going to cause permanent harm, and it will be exponentially greater than COVID-19 will ever be. And we were scoffed at, we were laughed at, we were mocked, we were scorned. And of course, now, guess what? We were right.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that we were right for a very long time. We knew that we were right from, April of 2020?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's October of 2022. And now people are like, well, I guess there could be some long-lasting results from the lockdowns. But we don't want to say that it's directly from the lockdowns. We're just going to say maybe we acted too harshly. Maybe we're too brash.
Like, or they're going to say we didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not like I like what Steven Crowder said about it. It's not but like, oh, we're basically following the science at the time. That's not like accurate. That's misleading. What really, how you should evaluate the action did these things is, was there available evidence that you were intentionally not looking at?
Yeah.
That is the way you should, like, evaluate it. What really should, like, if you took a second and really thought about what the people in charge did to us, because remember, like, who was the governor of New York? He was kind of kicked out because of
Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo is a criminal.
Yes.
He is responsible for intentionally killing like thousands of New Yorkers in nursing homes. He's responsible for that. Whitmer, Michigan, she's responsible for thousands of people dying. Gavin Newsom in California, he's responsible for thousands of people dying because of their policies. And Anthony Fauci. Here in Canada, we have people who should, like, in a fair and just world, these people would have been criminally charged for their horrible actions to their own citizens. But instead, they're getting, like, this is the world where the people who should, in a just and fair world, like in the old world, these people should actually be getting death penalty for the crimes against their own citizens. But instead, they're getting rewarded right now. And it's absolutely crazy. And one of those people, which blows my mind, it shows how people literally deserve. They get the leaders that they deserve.
Yep.
Is what happened
Francois Legault. So Legault re-elected with supermajority government in Quebec election. Premier Francois Legault has been re-elected with his coalition Avenir Québec party winning a second majority in the province's National Assembly. Radio-Canada called the election in Legault's favor at 8:10 p.m., projecting both his re-election and a second majority. The CAQ won 90 seats, a gain of 16 seats from 2018. The Quebec Liberals placed second in terms of seat count with 21 seats, a loss of 10. Meanwhile, the Solidaire Party won 11 seats, up 1 from 2018. The Separatist Parti Québécois won only 3 seats, amounting to a loss of 7. Disparity between popular vote share and seats won can be attributed to the first-past-the-post system, in which the candidate with the most votes as an individual riding wins, irrespective of margin. So, of course, while the Conservative Party of Quebec performed well in the popular vote, it failed to win a seat. And, of course, the PCQ received 12.92% of the vote, up from the 1.46% received in the 2018 provincial election. Mm-hmm. So it received nearly more than 10% of the vote, but it didn't get a single seat. Crazy.
Yeah, that's a problem with our political system.
Yeah. But
it's insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look back at some of the things that Legault did to his own people. He was the only premier in all of North America who actually did a quarantine, and he even said
not just a quarantine, he did a curfew.
Yeah, a curfew. Yeah, sorry, that's right. Yeah, you're right. That's what I meant to say. He did a curfew, and he even said publicly, "Oh, I know a curfew is not going to help COVID, but we're going to do it anyway." Yeah. He knew. He declared publicly that it was it was total garbage. He still did it. He's like Quebec.
Quebec became a police state under COVID.
Yeah, it was brutal.
And Quebec forced vaccines. Quebec did. They were the first province to start mandating vaccines to do public services.
Yeah, and they also threatened. I mean, they got blocked, but they threatened to have a tax for the unvaccinated.
Yes,
they were threatening to do that level of insanity.
Yeah, pure nasty evil.
Yeah, this is the kind of this is a pattern you should watch for.
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice this in Democrat states. Have Democratic states like New York, like California. California re-elected Gavin Newsom after a recall attempt.
Yeah.
The people in California, particularly in the big cities, are so insanely that they're being destroyed by their own government, and they keep re-electing.
Mm-hmm.
It's at that point you believe they deserve what they get because their own leaders are destroying them and they keep reelecting. At that point, you're just like, you deserve what you get. Like New York keeps reelecting Democrats, and their city is a gigantic third world dystopia. It is insane the things that are happening in New York. They keep reelecting. They keep choosing the same. It's like choosing your torturer. Imagine being tortured, in a prison or something like that. You're being tortured, and oh, by the way, we're gonna have to see who want our torturers torturing us, or if we want to choose someone else. It's like I'll choose for the. I haven't gotten tortured enough on the back yet, but that's what they're doing. So yeah, it's insane that these people are choosing these people. But that's the world we live in. Like the amount of foolishness that is happening, it's insane.
Yeah.
But it's not just him; it's also our prime minister. So our prime minister, you could argue, has done irreparable harm to millions of Canadians who are dead because of these guys.
Yep.
And yet, he keeps getting away with all this nonsense. Like what he did yesterday, or like this week.
Yep.
Take it away, Steve.
So, while Canadians struggle to make ends meet, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau under fire for bungee jumping on day off. Justin Trudeau has come under fire by several Canadians on social media after we went bungee jumping with his children near Ottawa. In a video that surfaced online, the Prime Minister is dressed in a red flannel. He counts to 5 and then throws himself off the bungee tower. According to the company, he was accompanied by his 2 children. You never know who you'll encounter at the bungee tower. Of course, Justin Trudeau came to jump this morning with his son Xavier and daughter Ella Grace. Mystery has been solved as to where Justin Trudeau was this weekend. It wasn't doing disaster relief. Wait for it, he was bungee jumping.
Mm-hmm.
Guess we know why Justin Trudeau couldn't make any of the rallies in Toronto a sport of Iran this weekend. He was too busy bungee jumping. Yep, Canadians struggled to make ends meet. Justin Trudeau went bungee jumping. This is the video.
Check. Looking at the highway. You got this. You're in a good position. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Sweet. Thanks, guys. Thanks, boys.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. Is there anything wrong, Stephen, with like a political leader having some kind of like fun activity?
Nope.
Not particularly, right? I don't see a problem with any. If Biden wants to go biking, I'm like, hey, go for it. If I don't know, Jacinda Ardern wants to go hike,
yep,
no problem. The problem is the optics.
The optics and the timing.
Remember, what was that one thing he did, Stephen? Like, remember a year ago during the Day of Reconciliation? Like, the big thing that he was advocating, like, all the natives? What was the thing that he did when that was happening? That very important day when he should have been in Kamloops?
Wasn't
you don't remember,
he, like,
David?
shirtless on a beach in BC?
He was in Tofino. He was surfing.
Yeah.
In Tofino when he basically should have been, so basically it was a day off because of the reconciliation
the new
day.
Federally demanded holiday.
Yes, that he created, and on that holiday, he took the opportunity to go surfing, and rightly so. I'm not a big fan of this day because I think it's based on a lie.
Hoax.
It's a hoax, but he did that knowing full well that it was a day that like the prime minister,
should have made an appearance and probably
should
should have
made
made a
appearance.
speech, considering that he was the one who demanded this holiday in the first place.
Something, and yet he went surfing.
Yeah.
And then, recently, he went to England because it was the Queen's funeral. It was a big deal. It was a very somber event.
And then sang about death.
Is there anything wrong with the Prime Minister having fun, singing the song that he likes? No. Timing
and optics.
This is how out of touch these leaders are. They can do whatever they want. They will never ever face justice, and more than that, they basically this guy is destroying people's lives, and he believes that he'll never face justice. This is the closest I've ever to what, because I remember studying history. I remember studying kings like Louis the 14th.
Yep.
Louis the 14th was like one of the most iconic kings of France. Extravagance. They were living in the opulence in the royal city. They were living complete and total opulence while their populace was starving to death.
Yeah.
But eventually, his son, Louis the 16th, was basically the recipient of the French Revolution. People rose up, and they were sick and tired of the royalty. And he was like, basically, they tried to escape, but they were caught, and you had the whole thing with Aunt Mary Antoinette. Perhaps this is what happens. The people in the royal palace had no idea what life was outside. And this is what we're getting now. You're getting leaders like Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, like Francois Legault, Jason Kenney, who believe that they are untouchable, that they are so far above the little people, are causing enormous suffering and harm to people, and they don't. And Steven's got something going on here.
Oh no, I'm just remembering a moment from high school. Because we were talking about the French Revolution.
Yep.
And it was like the trial of Louis the 16th, I believe.
Okay.
And so it was like this mock trial, and it was talking about Louis the 16th, and then the like the mock emperor, which was put in to replace him.
Okay.
And so I think in that trial, I put Louis the 16th on the stand.
Okay.
And I was like, yep. This person was nominated by like the Holy Roman Empire, were they not? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, then he is entitled to the divine right of kings, is he not? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, and his title for the throne is equal to yours. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, then you have no right and claim to the throne. Bye-bye. He's like, and my teacher was like, okay, you can't say that. I'm like, why not? He admitted that he wasn't the valid recipient of the throne. I'm like, I just walked him through it, and he was just like, crap.
Darn you, logic.
Darn you, logic. And I was like, oh man. I was just remembering, I'm like, I thought of this whole scheme when I was like 15. Oh man.
Stephen owning people even like young age.
That was funny.
Yeah. Well done, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
if you ever want to hear crazy stories from my high school days, yep. Mock trials in law class. In my grade 12 yearbook, when you have like the favorite quotes from everybody, like 5 or 6 people had quotes from my mock trial. Because the stories that I made up in that mock trial were golden. So that
Steven
being
had
said,
the golden ticket back then.
I still have the golden ticket for great stories.
That's right.
I am a good storyteller.
He's phenomenal.
All right. With that being said, that's probably where we're going to end today's show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're following us on our video platforms, such as YouTube, Rumble, NewTube, and BitChute, then give us a like, follow, subscribe, comment, all of the above. Let us know how we're doing. Hopefully we can figure out Rumble's system, because like part of the system tells me we have a certain amount of views, and then another part of the system is like, you have 10 times that. And I'm like, what?
It's a little quirky.
Rumble, figure your crap out.
Yeah.
If you're looking for any of our sources, any of our extra content, extra materials, you can also find it at theshrewddudes.com. And you can find extra posts made by Danny and anything else in old material that may not appear in any of those platforms. Following us on our text platforms, such as Facebook, Gitter, Twitter, and Parler, then like, share, comment, echo, follow, everything and all of the above, because they're different in all the platforms. If you really like our content, then of course, send us a message and leave us a review, because the libs hate us, and getting back at them is always great.
We're pissing off all the right people.
And I knew that because of all the fingers I received on Sunday. That being said, Danny, I sign us out on Tuesdays. Ha! Here at the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we like to remind you, why be rude when you can be shrewd? We will see you on Thursday for our regularly scheduled live stream. Until then, have a great night, great evening, and as always, God bless.
Hogging the closing, my goodness. Good night, everybody.
That is classy.